Hello and welcome to another of my Eye of the Dragon videos. I wanted to make this one part of a series I'll call Christian Q&A, where I tackle some questions I've come across from different people about what I believe as a Christian and why. And let me apologize in advance because my allergies are acting up and my throat is really off lately, so my voice may sound messed up. Also, sorry for any typos that might crop up in the text for those of you who are hearing impaired. I went over this for errors after recording with speech-to-text, but nobody's perfect. Last but not least, I apologize for any shortcomings in the quality of this video, but since I'm at Army training and don't have my laptop, my resources are rather limited. If I had the editing savvy, I'd throw in a clip of Doc Brown apologizing about one of his models, but I guess that'll have to wait. Anyway, today's particular subject is a question I got from a coworker once, asking whether Christians can be scientists. Now, the simple answer to this question is that yes, Christians can be scientists just as easily as we can be cashiers or historians or writers. At its most basic, science is essentially the practice of observing and discovering things about the world, chiefly through what's called the scientific method. This is basically a series of steps where you observe things going on in the world, raise questions about those things, and then investigate and record them using what's called a controlled experiment. For example, if scientists want to know whether a certain food increases one's chances of cancer, they may take X number of essentially identical laboratory mice, keep them in identical conditions with identical diets, and then make the one change of feeding half of them the food in question and keeping it away from the other half. Then, of course, they see if the one group that eats this food gets more cases of cancer than the other group. Kind of cold-blooded, but if it keeps people from getting cancer, science has won. Now, while some experiments obviously can get very complex, the process of thought involved is pretty simple and basic at its core, and virtually anyone can do it if they choose to do so. Indeed, there are actually a number of surprising scientific insights and revelations in the Bible, and Bible passages that make a lot more sense based on what we know about science now than people may have known at the time they were written. There are also a number of extraordinary thinkers and innovators throughout history who have been Christians, and I will try to link to some videos on those 2 points in the description for this video. So the simple answer is that yes, Christians can be scientists. Anyone who can think in basic cause and effect terms and ask questions about the world around them can be a scientist. However, there is a somewhat deeper answer to this question. To get at that, one has to look at the question of why someone would even wonder about this. There is a popular misconception, especially among atheists, that scientific explanations for the world around us are anathema to people of a religious mindset, and particularly to Christians. For those of us who don't know the word anathema, basically it means we do not tolerate them. It's also commonly portrayed that Christians are mentally inferior to other people and or are dense and behind the times about breakthroughs and advances. As I've touched on a minute ago, this is very untrue. For example, our current understanding of genetics all began with garden experiments conducted by a monk. The MRI machines justly hailed as the greatest medical advance of this century were invented by an outspoken Christian. And Johann Kepler, one of the most influential astronomers in history, described his work simply as thinking God's thoughts after him. Coupled in with the bias against Christians, there's a kind of snobbish mindset which holds that science is totally incompatible with supernatural explanations and events, which tend to go hand in hand with religion. Indeed, the Christian faith in particular is inextricably linked with the supernatural, as it literally revolves around someone who claimed to be God, a supernatural claim, purported to come from a supernatural origin, virgin birth, performed supernatural acts to validate his claims, and spoke of a supernatural mission which he ultimately accomplished through the granddaddy of all supernatural acts when he died an incontrovertible death and came back in 3 days like it was nothing. Secularists look at this and say, well, no scientist can believe all that hoodoo, and no one who believes all that hoodoo can be a scientist. They're mutually exclusive. The hole in that attitude is that science is about studying the normal workings of the universe, not saying those normal workings are the only way things ever go. Indeed, the very claim that nothing exists outside the realms of science, especially science as we know it, is by definition unscientific on two levels. First of all, it stifles scientific inquiry into areas we do not yet understand by saying ne plus ultra, no more beyond. For example, if explorers in Africa had laughed off stories of Bigfoot-like giant apes, we might still think gorillas were fairy tales. The same holds true of Komodo dragons and giant squid. Similarly, if people held diligently to the notion that water only ever flows from high places to low places, we'd have to ignore things like siphons, pumps, and the tide-powered horizontal falls of Australia, in which lunar gravity displays its power over water levels on Earth. The fact of the matter is, the laws of science as we know them are very different from the laws of science as they actually are. The same as in history, criminal investigation, and even relationships. Things we took for incontrovertible fact just yesterday get flipped on their heads all the time. It's profoundly arrogant to think that the workings of the universe have to bend to our perception, or that our perception is so grand and vast as to encompass the whole workings of the universe, especially at any one time in the ongoing march of study and discovery. On a deeper level, this idea that the entire universe is bound to the confines of science stretches scientific thought into a purely unscientific philosophy. There's no way any experiment or observation can rule out the possibility of things beyond observation or experiment. That's like a deaf optical physicist saying, well, we can't observe sound on cameras or other light-based equipment, so we know optical physics rules out the existence of sound. So what exactly does that mean? Well, simply put, it means that yes, Christians by definition believe in things that are at odds with the laws of science. That is, with the normal workings of the universe, or our limited and imperfect understanding of those workings. We believe as the very basis of our faith in a God who can and does intervene in those workings when it suits him. Not that much unlike a homeowner catching a breakable valuable on its way to the floor. However, just as that homeowner both recognizes and benefits from gravitation all the time, so Christians can and often do probe those normal workings to their benefit and pleasure, as well as those of their neighbors. After all, the normal scientific workings of nature and the miraculous interventions in them both come from the same God. As Galileo once said, mathematics is the alphabet with which God has written the universe. I hope this has been interesting and informative for those of you watching. Please feel free to comment and subscribe, and of course I look forward to your feedback. Thanks for watching, and see you all next time on Eye of the Dragon.